as well. Okay, perfect. And just some housekeeping before we get started. This presentation, like I said, is now being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel to watch at a later date. And we have everybody on mute during the presentation, but just if you have a question, maybe put it in the chat or Q&A, and then at the end of the presentation, we'll give some time to answer those questions. And yeah, so today I am here with Amanda Smith, who is the Agriculture Programs Coordinator with Langley Environmental Partners Society. And she is going to present today on pasture management in terms of the health of your horse and your property. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you all for coming to today's webinar. We're really happy to be able to do outreach and education. And so yeah, I'm presenting today on pasture management for property. And I have on the title slide updates. And it's interesting that why would we have updates? And what kind of context would that be? So to give everybody context, this presentation is based from the Land Management Guide for Horse Owners and Small Lot Farmers, to which LEPS has originally did in 2009 and also did an update in 2020. And it is a guide that was also supported by the province of British Columbia, to which we received funding to be able to do this kind of outreach. Some of you may be familiar with that document, especially if you are a member of the Horse Council. So yeah, so updates is kind of referring to some of the new legislation that kind of came down in 2020 in regards to agricultural environmental waste, and that sort of stemmed from even the Water Sustainability Act. So we're dealing with a lot of layers of things. So I hope that I can cover as much as I can within the next 45 minutes, because I want to allow some time for questions at the end. We can go to the next slide. So who is LEPS? If you're not really familiar with us, just a little bit of a bio about our company. So our kind of mandate is to protect and restore the natural environment through education, cooperation, and action. We are a non-for-profit, non-government or environmental organization, which started in 1993. So we've been around for quite a while within the township of Langley, to which where our office is located. We are made up of various full-time and seasonal staff. Our core programs are watershed stewardship, agricultural stewardship, restoration, and education. So we have currently, that's not our full staff that you see right there. We actually have a little bit less than that, but we're going to be getting some summer staff to help us with some of our projects. But that's a little bit about us and the work we do. We'll go to our next slide. So pasture management. So in terms of my role at LEPS, I do a lot of education, but a lot of outreach to our local agricultural landowners. So that could be made up of hobby farmers, horse owners, and general farmers, especially because the township of Langley has 1,500 kilometers of water courses going through our municipality, and 800 of those 800 kilometers is salmon bearing streams. And I know that municipalities across BC can have up to that kind of makeup too. So our land parcelization can be quite small compared to other municipalities because we have these natural water courses. So that's kind of a little bit about some of the work that I do. And that's why we're talking about pasture management, because we're in June right now and our pastures are growing unless they're being grazed right now. And because I think we're all kind of in that boat where it's the high season. So pasture management, especially if you are someone who has another job, or if you're very busy, or your property is so large, it can be sometimes kind of daunting to kind of manage your pasture, because it can be often overlooked. But maintenance can actually save you a lot of money. And that's where kind of all of these things kind of come into play. So being able to identify weed concerns, erosion, and health problems is really crucial for not only the environmental health, but also for our horses and our other livestock. So poorly managed pastures can create mud and dust, which can cause respiratory disease, sand colic, and thrush. And also by heightening the quality of the pasture, you could actually increase the nutritional needs of your own horses. So that's kind of like it's kind of a thing where we actually, if we have pasture, we kind of need to really look at it and kind of manage it properly because we want to make sure we have land, like, grazing for our horses. We can go to our next slide. So if you are, looking at your property and you're having a really good sort of walk around, you might identify some things that would put you in a category that, you only need to do a partial sort of renovation because not all, depending on the size of your property, not every area will be the same. Depending on the fescues, depending on the weeds, and of course your soil is very important too. So there could be areas that you want to rehabilitate or we need an overall renovation. So partial, if your grasses appear to be lacking in density and somewhat overrun by weeds, and that would be, having to improve drainage, aerating, eliminating acidic conditions, reseeding, and spreading manure. Complete if it's less than 25% of your pasture growth, and if it's composed of desirable plant species. So reseeding to match your soil, rototilling existing grasses to maintain a seed bed, and spread keep horses off the field until new grasses are established at a height of at least 50 to 20 centimeters. So that's quite a bit of work. So I think what it is really going onto your properties, looking and seeing where are your horses, what kind of contents is part of in the pasture, because that's very important as we kind of go through the slides. So weed management, especially in southern BC, is like it's quite interesting because we're dealing with a lot of acidic soils because we have quite a different kind of weather landscape down here. And we tend to not drain very well, especially if we have our acidic soils. We can go to our next slide. And this is where we want to really look at this is why we want to look at our properties, because this is all about weed and poisonous plant management. There is, I think it's really important to identify some of the stuff that's in our property. So knowing your weeds, and certain ones actually are poisonous to horses, cattle, and sheep. That would include our common creeping buttercup, horsetail, and tansy ragwort. There's also annoying ones, which are thistle and stinging nettle. And there's also toxic invasive ones that can take over your property, which would be hogweed and Himalayan balsam. Himalayan balsam is kind of a unique one. It's not everywhere in British Columbia. It travels definitely excessively, but it's not so much in northern British Columbia. It's mostly in southern. I don't have a photo of that one, but I have photos of other weeds. Now, controlling these weeds are really important because there is a legislation called the BC Weed Control Act that can be mandated by municipal laws as well. So you'll have to check in with your local municipality to see what their kind of, because they might have bylaws as well. Some weeds require a permit to remove, which would be Japanese knotweed. Because you'll have to spray a pesticide. So there's some things that it's just really overall good to know, specifically what you have. Other methods would, if you're not going to be using herbicides, would be pulling, mowing, tilling, and burning. All methods have advantages and disadvantages. Now, even the burning, while we have it in the presentation, this is going to vary by municipality as well, depending on their bylaw makeup. Within the township of Langley, you're not allowed to be burning right now, and you can't even use a flame weeder. So that's one of the things is we have to really kind of come up with a management in terms of dealing with our weeds, because we don't want to have poisonous materials in our fescues, and that's really crucial. So I'll go to our next slide because we have photos of some of these weeds. So this is our tansy ragwort. This one is all around British Columbia, and it's kind of interesting. It has a very similar makeup to thistle, especially in terms of the seed head. Only difference between the Canadian thistle and tansy ragwort is the color. So it has a very similar makeup in terms of its seed head and its flower. The Canadian thistle is more purple before it turns to white, and tansy ragwort is more yellow before it turns to the white. And you can also tell by, if we let it keep going, that seed head, that white is gonna, it's kind of like, a dandelion going into seed. That's just gonna spread and fly. And that's what we don't want on our properties. So kind of identifying. So this one, I think usually goes not noticed on some properties, especially if they have not been maintained for a while. So that's a really interesting one to know. And you can even see in the back of that photo what the flower head looks like before it turns into seed. So at least you can identify that one. We can go to our next one. So we know our horsetail. It is probably one of the ones that's the most annoying. Not only does it flower at some point, the root is extremely difficult to get, and it's easily breakable. So I think the best management here is, if you do have horsetail, identify it early when it's baby and young, and just rip it as much as you can. And it depends on how much you have. Now, usually when you have horsetail, that would indicate that you have kind of a more sandier kind of soil. So that could be an idea as well. When you see your weeds, then before even doing a soil test, you can kind of ID like what you have, and that can kind of give you an indicator of what kind of soils you have. So horsetail, one of the most annoying. Go to the next one. Okay, everybody has this. It's kind of in flower right now, but for this to be on your property and have it be toxic for your horses is a major concern. It is a pain not only to remove, because it propagates by root division, not necessarily by seed head. That's the most annoying thing when you have a field of buttercup, which is always sporadic in fields. It's very, very tricky to remove every single root, but it's always nice to know what you have and indicate it early if you can see it. You are next. I think I have another one. Oh, okay. So here's our Japanese knotweed. Um, Unfortunately, somebody thought that was pretty enough to import it to Canada, and into North America. It actually is a beautiful plant, and that is what it looks like in flower right now. Some people have knotweed and not really know. It could be kind of in a shadier corner of the property, not always by a water course, but anywhere else, because it is also a plant that has the strongest root system, and it is almost impossible to eradicate unless you can use herbicides, to which you need to get a permit for. And with this Japanese knotweed, its root system is so aggressive that it is, if it's located by a house, it can actually damage your foundation of your house, and it'll bust through concrete. And this is one, it's really important. If you see it, you got to cut it right away, because if any insurance company knows that you have knotweed on your property, they won't they won't renew your insurance. So, and it's just because it's just one of these things. So I know I've diving in talking about weeds because it's the most important when it comes to having healthy pastures, but it's really important to kind of visualize some of these and have them in mind, because we just don't want environmental problems and also animal issues. So my next slide is about soil. And yes, so we're segueing in after talking about weeds, because that's again an indicator, an observation that you can kind of know what soil you have. But it really is important to test your soil. And under the, I'll say the whole name first, and then the next couple of slides I'm going to shorten it because it's a lot of words. So under the new Agricultural Environmental Management Code of Practice, which is now I'm going to say the AEM code, soil testing is required for those who apply nutrients, compost, or manure and have a land base of 2 hectares or more. However, if you apply manure to only half an acre, but you have a land base that's larger than that, you need to ensure that nitrate and phosphorus tests are conducted every 3 years for the area of the field you are applying nutrients. So that is kind of one of these new things. When I said on the first intro slide that there's updates, this is one that was new in this AEM code, which was updated in 2020. And you can view it actually. You can just type in AEM code BC and you can get the whole code yourself. on Google, and it tells you a bit more detail about more kind of setbacks and things like that between properties and also water courses. But soil is really important just because the Ministry of Environment and our other Department of Fisheries has some red flags that to which that's why some of these new regulations are kind of built into some of our our new AEM code, because it's really important, like especially when we have flooding. And that's another thing too, like we have areas of the province that flood, and if we're applying nutrients, it's really important to do our soil testing kind of like, well, at least here they say every 3 years for the area you're applying nutrients, because it's important to know how things are, because you're not dealing just with the nutrients that you apply, you're also dealing with the environment itself. So excessive rains and flooding can actually also impact your soils as well. And we all know water, if water is caught up anywhere, water has to move, it either goes down or it slides somewhere else. So we're actually moving around soils, and that's why that part was put into the new AEM code. And so yeah, soil testing is very important. Go to the next one. And this is another new thing that I know a lot of people are probably have not heard about, but under the AEM code, if you're spreading manure, we need to start doing record keeping. Um, and the reason why they said it is because it's important that nutrients cannot enter a water course, like at all, or a property boundary, or enter groundwater. And that is also for human health too, because last thing we want is um, flooding and for nutrients to be moving around and it gets in our wellheads, especially if we are on rural property and have wells. And so this is just an example. So in the land management guide for horse owners and small lot farmers, I actually put a link to it in the chat. It should be the very first thing that's in the chat. You can actually just click on that now if you're a computer savvy person, and you can open that up in another kind of tab, and you can have access to the online version of it. And I actually have in the back of that guide an example of kind of a record keeping document, and it's really only on file. Nobody's going to come see they only wanted people to start record keeping because if we have extreme weather events, especially what happened in Abbotsford a few years ago, that's really important to know, because we still have property owners out here that are still struggling with their wells, and they can't water their own animals nor have water access to their homes. Someone does not see the link. I don't know, Sarah, if you can kind of help or maybe repost it, that would be great. Yeah. Okay, so that's just an example. Nothing has to be, completely up to date or whatnot, but just do the best you can, because there would be at some points really important to know if there was any any issues on certain properties, and especially if, let's say, you have a neighbor who is applying manure or any other nutrients, and that's affecting you and other neighbors. It's just a way of making sure that we're all nice, safe, and healthy and happy, humans and animals. We can go to our next one. So we talked about weeds. Now we talked about soil and record keeping with applying nutrients. So now we have seed mixes and forage quality. So this is where this is going to really change by who are all of your feed stores within your municipalities. So in Langley, we have a few of them. I'm sure that across BC, there's quite a few. And I think that it's really important. Like, we can't say, because there's so many seed companies out there, what would be the best, but it's really important that you have a good relationship and actually talk to your seed retailer about what exactly they have on offer. Because really, at the end of the day, you want tall fescues, bent grass, perennial ryegrass, fine fescues, in these exercise areas, and also for grazing. That's kind of those are kind of the mixes that would give more nutrients for the diet. And it's honestly probably one of the safest things is just to make sure you talk to the seed retailer to make sure there's also nothing else in it, and potentially where it's coming from. because we know seeds and we know weeds, so we don't really want any kind of cross contamination. So talk to them and make sure that you have the full information. Okay, we'll go to our next one. Okay, so grazing management is also another thing. So we already mentioned when we talked about the renovation, whether it's partial or complete. Let the pasture grass reach, anywhere from 50 to 20 centimeters, and remove the horses after they've grazed down to about 8 to 10, just to ensure that the grasses can regrow. It's kind of like mowing our lawns. We mow to a certain point, because we know it's going to come back. So we always have to make sure that we have the right deck level on our mowers. It's kind of the same thing with managing pasture grass. Is we let it go high, they graze, it comes down, and then they can regrow. So it actually makes for a faster growing pasture. And also the rotational system of grazing. If you have a large property, is really important to manage that piece, because then you can move them around and always have enough pasture for them to graze. But the rule of thumb is really 1 horse per acre is essentially the grazing management there. And also the use of a sacrifice area, which again would be the area that you would place the horses in to let the pasture kind of regrow. But that's kind of the most important thing, is we want to make sure we have enough for grazing. Okay. So again, the all-in-one resource. So Sarah, did you get it put into the chat so people can see?
I think so. Yeah, I posted the wrong link at first, but I think it should be up there now. So
Okay, good.
yeah.
So that's why this guide is really important, because it took us about 3 years to first write, and we had a lot of different committees, and we had to read every single new regulation that the province of BC had in order to get as much information as possible within one guide. So I really, really do hope you visit it. And since we are, talking to people around BC, on page 44 of that guide is regional concerns. And so if you are in, the Thompson Okanagan, the Southwest, the Kootenays, the Caribou, more items will be within this that you can also read to update yourself with the rest of the stuff. So we put in there references to the Water Sustainability Act, the BC Weed Control Act, and also we have a few kind of comments within the guide in terms of our local health authority. So obviously, if you're Vancouver Coastal, or if you're Fraser Health, or your Interior Health, we actually reached out to all of those in all those organizations, and we wanted to know, how often do you need to test your well? Because with all of the environmental impacts that we've had within the province, well health is really important. And what they're saying as a general rule of thumb is that you test your well once a year. But if you are in kind of a more vulnerable environment to which you do incur flooding, it's really important that you do it probably twice a year. And with that said, though, some wellheads are covered, some are not, and some may have improper seals. So that's another thing too, to kind of check your well as well, because we can worry about our pastures, but at the end of the day, we still need to make sure that our wells are kind of up to date. And I know that in terms of wells within the province, there also is a new regulation that everybody has to register their well, and also a groundwater license. Some people are in that position, some people are not, but they'll also require your water to be tested out of your well. So another just good thing. That's why I just wanted to make sure I noted that, because our local health authorities do care, and they want us to be nice and healthy. Okay. So our major takeaways out of today, and that's why I'm kind of happy I finished around that 12:30 mark, so then we actually can have more of a conversation and questions. So major takeaways is testing soil and identify your weeds. So there, I have in brackets there's an app that you can download on your phone, and it's called iNaturalist. And you'll be able to take a snapshot. And I know that a lot of people have these apps where you can kind of take the photo of a plant and have it ID'd. I find iNaturalist is much more kind of credible, and it's much more accurate. So if you do have some weeds that you just quite can't identify, you can download that iNaturalist app and it can really help you. Recording your manure application. Sorry about that. You can just have it in a binder in the barn or in a drawer, and just make sure you knot it down. And we're doing all this to keep our water courses clean, because if our water courses are clean, that means our properties are clean, our pastures are clean, and our animals are healthy. Okay.
Awesome. Well, thanks so
Yeah,
much for
I
that.
have another slide.
You have another one still? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I was like, not sure. Oh, there we go. Perfect.
Yeah, so thank you.
Yeah. Is that the last one?
Yeah, it is the last one.
Yes, I
So,
think. Yeah.
again, like, we're ending. I'm we ended at the right time. I'm really happy because I wanted to make sure people had time. And if you have further questions and you feel that you don't want to put them in the chat or ask, you can just simply email me and I can get you the information if you need it.
Awesome.
Okay, well, there is some things in the chat.
Yeah, looks like we have some questions coming through for sure. So yeah, I guess we can just dive right into those. Yeah, Brittany is asking, are the requirements the same if there are no nearby water courses or wells? She's in the southern interior by the sounds of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
I did not write the regulation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay,
Unfortunately, yes.
perfect.
Yeah,
Um,
if I
and
have a PDF. Yes, you know what? I do have something that I can share. I'm gonna go to our LEP's website, and there's a slide on there, and I can drop that in there.
perfect. Yeah, and that's for the Michelle's question of
Yeah.
the PDF on dangerous weeds.
Hmm.
Awesome.
If I can't find it right now, what I can do is email it
Yeah. Yeah, that would be amazing as well.
to
And I
you, and
can,
then maybe we can kind of share it
yeah, I
amongst.
could send it out to yeah, the different participants and people registered.
Mhm.
Awesome. Brittany is asking again, do you have a list of places that do soil testing? Our local growers shut down.
Okay, Brittany, where are you again? You're in the
Southern
southern
interior.
interior. Okay, I can come up with that.
Perfect.
I'm just gonna make a note of some of this.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
kind of difficult to kind of grab it while you're in
yeah, for sure. Yeah. And yes, oh, Summerlin specifically in the,
Summerlin.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I know that there's a few of them shutting down, but then a new one will pop up, and it's like, oh, thank
Yeah,
you
yeah,
for advertising that you're here.
yeah.
Okay,
And
soil testing.
yeah, and let me know when you're ready for the next one.
I'm ready.
So Susan, she's like, can you say a little about how best to manage pastures where you are cutting for hay and then subsequently using them for grazing as well?
Okay, so it depends on the size of the property. So I just want to make sure I'm clarifying and I'm understanding correctly. So you have, I'm assuming, a few pastures to which you're cutting and then using them for grazing.
Yeah, and Susan, oh, she says yes to two pastures.
Okay, so I guess then you'd have to manage. So it's all about timing, unfortunately. So if you can't, if you don't have a sacrifice area to which you can keep them, that's probably kind of the key there, is kind of squaring out and fencing, and then almost managing the pastures and rotational planting. Because if you have two of them, you would cut one and then at the same time seed the other one in the meantime. Like, you kind of have to stagger, so then you can kind of cross back and forth. If that kind of makes sense. So it's really about the planting times. I don't know if that helps, if you can understand.
Yeah, and Susan, if you do want to come off mute as well and say a little bit more, you're welcome to, or put it in the chat as well.
Yeah, I could say a bit more about it. I have one very large pasture that's, probably bit more than 2 acres. And I was wondering about creating like a path around the outside that the horses could just walk around the perimeter
Yeah,
and
you could do that.
graze that until the hay's cut in the middle. And then
Okay.
um, I'm just wondering if there's other strategies people have and use for doing this, or any considerations around the grazing after the hay's been cut, so that you don't, damage the hay or the crop for the following year.
Right. Usually, like, yeah, if anybody else has anything that they're because it does depend on your like on the size and and like how your the makeup is, like if that kind of makes sense. So if anybody else has anything they would like to say, because unless I see a photo of the property, but I would think that what your plan is to create a path, yes, but that also would mean some kind of fencing as well.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think too, like if we could get you guys connected and stuff after as well, if you need to like kind of hash it
Yeah.
out in some more detail and share photos and whatnot as well. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
that requires overweight horse to be on grazing that is poor. I have an area, but it's all about health, getting more weeds.
yeah,
Ah,
yeah. Gail's question. Yeah. Oh, it's been crazy.
well, that's true. Any vet would say that they should be on. Yeah, so it really does depend on your horse at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. So I think, yeah, Gail's just asking um kind of the about health, like with
Yeah.
the weeds and buttercup, and then kind of just managing that with an overweight horse. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, but if there is evidence of buttercup and the overweight horse on this poor area is grazing, then that still isn't quite healthy. So I guess at the end of the day, yeah, it has to be the health is what you. But again, if it's very healthy and you have an overweight horse, then we'd have to manage how much time they're out grazing.
Yeah,
That's the other thing is kind of managing how much access they have to it when it's a healthy pasture.
yeah, absolutely. Um, okay, so Michelle is asking, for people interested in the iNaturalist apps, the one you want for ID is Seek
Seek.
by
Mhm.
iNaturalist. Okay, okay, so yeah. So it just sounds like maybe searching it in like the app store might come up
Yeah,
as Seek or
Seek, I think so. Yeah,
yeah,
because it's one that you would have to download off your Google Play or
yeah,
whatnot.
yeah. Okay. Eh, Um, Gail was just saying health of the pasture. Gail, did you want to come off mute and maybe just talk a little bit more to that?
Can you hear me?
It's very quiet. Very
Okay.
quiet, Gail.
Um,
Oh, that's
I'm
better.
just saying I'm concerned about the health of the pasture,
Yeah.
not the horse. He can be taken off the pasture, but the pasture is now so worn down that I don't know if it will recover.
Well, okay, so that there's a few layers to this. So, are you applying manure at all to the pasture?
Definitely not.
Okay. And what is the reason?
Um, I can't compost it enough,
Okay.
and I have never been a fan of spreading manure in their grazing area.
Okay. Well, it does help like if I guess if the pasture is poor and you're combating all these weeds, you'd have to at some point like do some removal if possible, and then start adding organic matter. I say that as a higher level, but we would need to start adding something else and also reseeding. I don't know if that's a possible thing either.
So
Because
yeah, that's possible. My next question is, if I'm going to reseed an acre and I'm going to add organic matter that isn't horse manure,
Mhm.
what's the next best thing to add?
Well, at that point, I mean, you'd have to see like going to like a wholesaler, a soil wholesaler, and seeing what makeup products they have, like what is the contents of them. I think that you'd have to still do some rototilling before you apply anything. So, um, rototilling, there's advantages to that and disadvantages. It rips up the roots of the weeds, and then it could spread. So, but then there's also a point where you can rototill enough to pull them up. But you have to start out by doing some spot of that to make sure you're removing some of the ones that are more toxic, and then apply whatever kind of soil makeup your local wholesaler supplier has, and then you start your reseeding.
So you're basically applying topsoil.
Yeah, if you don't want to apply your own local horse manure, but if you have issues with composting it enough, in the guide we have a few examples that you can do without spending a ton of money. And in the summertime, you'll be able to compost it, especially if you're getting quite a bit of heat. So there is some methods. So that's why I said there's a few layers to this. If you're not wanting to apply your horse manure because you can't compost it enough, there are some solutions to that
Thank you
without
very
spending
much.
it.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like we could have another webinar topic, maybe even on compost as well.
Composting horse manure.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but if you're able to, I just put in my email address there, so people can write it down. I can send everybody, like, you have something specific, like even the one with the dangerous weeds in a PDF, like, you can just simply email me, and I can respond right away with any of the information, and especially the wonderful person who wanted some advice in terms of getting their soil tested in Summerland,
Yeah, yeah.
because then I can just go directly and respond right away.
Yeah, that's perfect. Awesome. And then, yeah, I think that's all I see. If anybody else has more questions, certainly put them in the chat. That's all I see right now. And then Amanda as well, I'm not sure how many details we're allowed to talk about, but I think you're working on a course with Kelly, as well for pasture management. Are you able to divulge any information on that?
Actually, there's going to be like there's a few courses that are being developed through the Horse Council. Pasture management is one, but there was also composting. Yeah, so there's a few. I think that there's going to be another one. So they're actually following the land management guide, and they're breaking it down and having like online courses, and it's going to be pretty in depth. I'm not too sure when they're going to be ready for everybody, but that's in the works. So what ends up happening is that Horse Council contracts someone out to essentially create based on our guide and any other resources we've offered, and then I get to edit it and make some changes and make sure it's ready for everybody.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, yeah, we're looking forward to being able to release those. We're still kind of in the midst of getting our platform, I think, up and going and everything. But
Yeah.
yeah, we're excited for kind of some
Okay, so there is a question that came in. If I have a preference or recommendations regarding the fertilizer type. You know what, I'm also a horticulturalist, and I really stand behind the soil testing. So I literally cannot tell you what the makeup should be until I see the soil test report. I'm going to be very honest. I don't, because once I say what my preference is, and then people may think that that's the absolute across the board. So I'm one of those very careful people that I like to see a soil sample before I recommend a fertilizer.
yeah. Yeah, that's totally fair. Yeah, I'm sure
Yeah.
it's all, yeah, very individual and can
Oh, it
vary
is.
so
It
much.
is. No,
Yeah.
it completely is. That's why it's recommended to do soil testing about every 3 years, just because everything can change all the time.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Compost, yes, compost. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Okay.
Um, yeah, well, I don't see anything else at the moment, but I think everybody has your email now and everything like that. We have the courses in the works as well, so it'll be more information and they have access to the guide and everything. So yeah, I think that's a really great start for everybody. Yeah, so thank you so much for everybody attending today. And yeah, thanks so much, Amanda, for coming and giving this presentation. It was
Yeah,
great.
and also I should just mention before we sign off, we also have a YouTube channel, and we've been actually we have other topics on there if you're ever interested, and it's just the handle is Caps Leps and then Langley. You can click on it, and there's quite a few other presentations on various things that people may find interesting. And I've also included other presentations from the guide in that as well. So yeah.
Oh, that's a great, yeah, that's great. And I can always too like send out that YouTube handle and everything for people like in a follow-up email. So that would be great.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So thanks everybody for having me.
Yeah, yeah, thanks again. And yeah, have a good day, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.